What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Wealth Hack Wednesday. And today, like usual, I got a special treat. Today we're going to learn how this person lived in their house for free and built a $400,000 net worth. This is what we call house hacking, y'all. We're gonna learn this story. How did he do it? How did he live in his house for free and build a $400,000 net worth? We're gonna find out that and more right now.
Hey everyone, I'm Chad Carson from the website CoachCarson.com and author of the book Retire Early with Real Estate. You know, I love Jeff's Wealth Hack Wednesdays because they're so darn practical and useful. So today I'm going to bring you a hack that helps you save money and build wealth with a place you're probably using every single day, your home. And the strategy is called house hacking. About 16 years ago, I was in my early 20s and I had sort of reached that transition stage where you're ready to move out of your friend's spare bedroom. You know, you're kind of graduating from college into the real world. My career was going pretty well. I was a real estate investor. I was making a little bit of money. Kind of like my other friends at the time, they were all buying houses. They were moving into a home. And that was really tempting. You know, you deserve it. You're making money. Why not do that? Well, I took a little bit different route. I actually bought a 4-unit apartment building, so a fourplex, and I moved into 1 unit. I fixed it up. It was kind of ugly. It actually had Merry Christmas spray painted across the front of it, so it was a little scary. It was a foreclosure property, but I spent some money on it, put some sweat equity into it, fixed it up, and I got the other 3 units rented out, and the income from those 3 units was able to pay for my mortgage, my principal and interest payment, my taxes and insurance payment, and have some money left over to pay for some maintenance. Essentially, I was living for free in my lovely little fourplex building, while my friends who were living in the house were paying $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month to live in their nice, beautiful house, not to mention all the furniture and everything else they bought. Now, the point was I got into house hacking, and I want to tell you a little bit more about how this house hacking works. Now, here's how I would define house hacking. It's essentially turning your home into an income generating asset. So you live there and you also figure out a way to generate some kind of income. And I'll give you some examples here in a minute. The other thing is you look at your home through a little bit different lens. You look at it and you evaluate it more as an investment in addition to being your home. Now, that doesn't mean you have to live in house hacks your entire life. I think there's a case to be made for it being a kind of a short-term period of your life and then move on and live in your dream home later on. But there are a lot of benefits to doing a house hack, to having a house hack or two early in your life, maybe later in your life. And some of the benefits, number one, as I already mentioned, is that you can reduce your housing payment, either have an incredible deal like I did and completely eliminate your housing payment, or in many cases, you can just reduce it. You can go from what would be a $1,500 payment to maybe a $1,000 payment, maybe $1,500 to $750. With housing and affordable housing and being able to afford your payments in so many areas being a big issue, that's a big deal. And you are watching Wealth Hack Wednesdays. You know about the power of compounding. So if you can save some money right now, especially early in your life, your 20s, your 30s, look at how much that saved money can be worth down the road. I'm going to show you a little bit later what those numbers meant for me at the end of this video, show you how much money that potentially could have been by living in a house hack early in my life. But in addition to reducing your housing expense, this is a great way to get into real estate investing if that's something you're interested in. So look at me. I bought the fourplex building. I lived there for a few years, actually got married, and my wife moved in. That was our first place that we lived in for a couple of years until we transitioned to another smaller house to start a family. But we kept the building. So that 4-unit building is still a rental property. I still have it rented. And the really interesting part about that is getting into real estate can be kind of hard sometimes if you're directly owning real estate, but I was able to use an owner-occupant loan. So some of the best loan programs out there with the smallest down payments, the lowest interest rates are available if you move into the property. So I did move into the property. I lived there for several years. But then once you move out, if you move on to another house and buy that house, you can keep that. You can keep the loan. You can keep the rental property. Very often it becomes a nice positive cash flow rental property. And I was able to learn to be a landlord without just jumping into it and owning a bunch of rental properties. I live next door to the tenants. I could kind of learn as I go. I can fix things if I need to. I'm not that handy myself, but I could hire people and kind of watch what they're doing. This is a very smooth transition into getting into the landlording and buy and hold rental business. And so you can continue to own that. Maybe you do that 2 or 3 times. You have a few rental properties and then you move on and you live in a regular old house at that point. So it's an excellent way to save money, to transition to real estate investing, and then eventually to hold a rental property for the rest of your life. Now, you may be wondering how you can do this. Perhaps you don't have a fourplex building in your local market, or maybe you're not that excited about living next door to your tenants. So let me give you a few examples of how this concept of house hacking could be more broadly applied. Now, the more traditional house hack is something like buying a duplex which has 2 units, a triplex with 3 units, or maybe a fourplex with 4 units. The nice thing about that is you can live in one unit, rent the others out, but you can also get financing as if it was a single family house. A lot of the conventional mortgage programs are made for 1 to 4 unit buildings. So all of the programs with lower down payments like FHA, which is the Federal Housing Administration loan, and other programs are built for these small residential units. So that's a good place to start, but it's not the only thing. Now, what if you found a house, or you look for houses in your area that have a basement apartment or a garage apartment or a guest house or what's called an accessory dwelling unit, also called an ADU, which are becoming much more popular these days. I've even seen little tiny houses, people building tiny houses in their backyards. Well, what if you could rent one of those and live in your house? Maybe you find a grad student or a young person who just needs to rent that, or a retired person who needs to rent that, so that could be a possibility even in a single family house neighborhood. Another idea is I have a friend who rented spare bedrooms. He had just recently graduated from college. He couldn't find a duplex in Washington, D.C. area where he was. And so instead he got a 3-bedroom house, and he talked to his roommates from college who are also just recently graduating. And they started making payments to him. They lived in the 2nd and 3rd bedroom, and he was able to do a house hack with that. And with the advent of Airbnb and a lot of the shared economy, renting out spare bedrooms and spare spaces is becoming much more mainstream. And so you can turn your home into a house hack if that's what you wanted to do. You can also even go beyond that and be even more creative. I'm constantly amazed as I talk about house hacking, how many different possibilities there are. If you're in an urban area, I've heard of people where parking is a premium, renting out space in their driveway for parking, if that's allowed with your local zoning. Or if you're out in the country, or in kind of places like where I am, out in the country of South Carolina, maybe you could rent out some extra space to an RV or to a mobile home, and just find, if you had some extra land or some extra lots that allowed you to do that, you could generate income. The point is thinking about your home not just as a place you live, but also as an asset that could potentially generate income and maybe turn into an investment later on down the road if you were to move out. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, not over my dead body will I be doing a house hack. Either I'm not going to live next to my tenant, that might be your situation, or maybe you just have a big family and there's just no way you're going to cram yourself into a little tiny apartment. That's fine. There's no one size fits all strategy, but I will encourage you with a couple of things. Number one, remember what I said earlier, that this is not a forever strategy. This is a good strategy that you do for a certain period of your life. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, 10 years, and then you move on. You can, if you are willing to do something a little bit out of the ordinary that's good for you financially right now, compounding's on your side, the future's on your side financially. You can then do a lot more of the dream home and the things you really want to do later on. So that's one idea. The other idea is that you can have variations on house hacking that don't involve renting it while you live there. Just think about your house, buying a more affordable house that could be rented, that the numbers would work as a rental if you didn't live there. And then down the road, you move out, maybe a few years later, and you then keep it as a rental. So kind of like a house hack, I call that a live-in, then rent. Very similar to that, but while you live there, you have your privacy. You have room for your family, and then later on it becomes a rental, and you rinse and repeat and do that again. So the point is there are possibilities out there if you think a little bit differently. I promised you earlier that I would come back with a little bit of math to show you the power of compounding and what this house hacking strategy could mean for you down the line. So I just want to give you a real brief example. If let's say you did house hacking and similar to my situation, you saved about $1,000 for a 5-year period of your life. That's it. 5 years, you're going to live in this fourplex building, you're going to rent out a spare bedrooms or whatever you're going to do. You're going to save $1,000 per month, and you're going to invest that money consistently every single month. You're going to save it. You're going to invest it. Let's just say you dollar cost average it, invest it in the stock market or something. And let's say you make a 7% return going forward on an annual basis. So that $1,000 per month turns into about $69,000 5 years from now. And that's with annual compounding if you like to use a financial calculator and you're figuring it out alongside me. But the story's not over yet, because you move on. 5 years from now, you've been doing this house hack, but you move on and you move into your dream house, for example. but your original savings is still there. So you still have that $69,000 and it continues growing and compounding at 7% well into the future. So if you fast forward, if you go 20 years from the very beginning when you first started, or 15 years from when you moved out of that house hack, that $69,000 that you had after 5 years has increased to about $190,000 at the end of those 20 years. So the difference between me and some of my friends who went and lived in that dream house right off the bat and bought that big and made those $1,000 payments, and what I did with a house hack for 5 years is like $200,000 20 years from now. That's also not the end of the story, because I also have this asset. I have this building that I bought, and let's say 20 years from now, I've got that thing paid off. It's appreciated a little bit in value. It's very possible that the building I bought that was originally worth $150,000 is now worth $200,000 to $300,000. I've got the debt paid off, so I have an asset worth $200,000 or $300,000. I've invested some money and have another $200,000. The power of house hacking is that future value. It's the fact that you save money now, you let it compound, and it grows into huge numbers, maybe $500,000, and in bigger cases, if you're more aggressive, maybe even $1 million decision just from choosing to do house hacking. So that's why I'm excited about it. That's why I brought you this wealth hack today. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Is house hacking something that you've done? Is it something you're interested in doing? Do you have any questions for me about the situation I was in or about house hacking in general? We'd love to hear from you. Appreciate your time. My name is Chad Carson from CoachCarson.com and the book Retire Early with Real Estate. Hope to hear from you soon.